who goes where? Prime Minister Carney gets ready to show off his team. This is Now You Know. I'm Rob Snow.
Deeper than the headlines.
The answers you need to know.
This is Now You Know with Rob Snow on News Radio.
Tomorrow will be another big day for Canada's new Prime Minister. Mark Carney will unveil his new cabinet tomorrow during a ceremony at Rideau Hall. What will Mark Carney do? Will he keep many of the old faces around, the members of Justin Trudeau's cabinet? Or will there be new faces in high-profile positions? Shortly after winning the Liberal Party's leadership race, Mark Carney picked a smaller 23-member cabinet. Tomorrow's cabinet is expected to include more members than that. Among the frontrunners for cabinet posts are new Liberal MPs like Gregor Robertson, the former mayor of Vancouver, and Tim Hodgson. He was an advisor to Mark Carney at the Bank of Canada, used to lead the Canadian operations of Goldman Sachs, and was the chair of the board of Hydro One, the big Ontario electricity utility. This will be Mark Carney's team, and it is a team facing many challenges, chief among them trying to secure a trade deal with the Trump administration. Prime Minister Carney had his first visit with U.S. President Donald Trump last week at the White House, and although there was no breakthrough on any of the trade issues with the Trump administration, Carney's White House debut did get positive reviews. Tim Powers is the chair of Summa Strategies.
So much of it now is, do you get Zelensky'd or not, or not? And the fact that that didn't happen, and the fact that Carney was cleverly able, I thought, in a couple of occasions to make some points about Canada was good. I think the most interesting thing for me being in Washington yesterday was to have it driven home by a couple of longtime Republicans who aren't necessarily Trump-aligned, but that they really believe, at least the people I was talking to yesterday, that this isn't just some passing fad with Trump, that he really does think that he has to fix the trade imbalance as he sees it, despite his facts and figures being wrong. And unless Canada is prepared to do something in the agricultural sectors, the cultural sectors, on defense, and around minerals and resources, that it's going to be tough to get a good deal.
Dealing with Donald Trump and trying to advance Canada's trade interests will be a longer-term project, according to some political observers, and last week was just the beginning, according to Liberal strategist Nick McRoberts of Hill and Knowlton.
He's very clearly been briefed on how to interact with Donald Trump in a very friendly way. You know, he spoke about real estate and he spoke about Buckingham Palace. Those are two things that have been reported that the president really likes, is the royal family, the Queen, and real estate. And so Carney's trying to build that rapport to him, or with him, and while at the same time being able to fact check him and, you know, say that we'll never be the 51st state and Canada is not for sale, but stressing that partnership as well. And he did it again later in that pool spray when he talked about Canadian cars being 50% American. I think that's going to be a line that goes through Carney's messaging moving forward, is this idea of integrated supply chains, and he did an effective job of messaging that.
One of Prime Minister Carney's big concerns should be the future of the Canadian auto sector, according to Professor Ian Lee from the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University, who says Trump has his sights on foreign-made auto production.
I think he wants to kill our auto industry. That idea he wants to take over Canada is nonsense. I think he wants to take back the auto industry because of the Rust Belt state, which is his political base: Ohio, Michigan, Illinois, Pennsylvania. And he wants those 1.3 million cars, those 1.3 million cars made in Canada. That would be one hell of a boost to Donald Trump if he could say, I brought home all those jobs from those 1.3 million, and now we'll just export them to Canada like we do to Australia that exited the auto industry.
In addition to dealing with Donald Trump on trade and other matters, the new prime minister is also facing anger in the West. In Alberta, the Liberals won just 2 of the province's 37 seats. In Saskatchewan, the Liberals won just 1 of that province's 14 seats. In Alberta, Premier Danielle Smith is going to make it easier for supporters of Alberta separation to put a referendum to voters. And in Saskatchewan, Premier Scott Moe has said he won't prevent a vote on separation from being held either. Premier Moe warned Ottawa last week that for many on the prairies, the status quo can't continue.
You know, those feelings of alienation are a response to the policies that have been put in place over the last number of years, policies that, as you know, in this gallery and this province, that this government has opposed every step of the way since I've been leader and prior to that under my predecessor. And so, those feelings of alienation, anger, they shouldn't be discounted in any way. Those are Canadians. Those individuals are Canadians and they're Saskatchewan residents. And but I would say it's incumbent on myself as Premier to work with a new Prime Minister, the same government, but a new Prime Minister on making every effort to chart a path forward that is good for Saskatchewan, but also good for Saskatchewan within the nation of Canada.
That's very similar to the feelings expressed by Alberta Premier Danielle Smith, who has told news reporters Alberta needs a reset with Ottawa.
I would hope that the near-death experience of the Liberals, where they were almost obliterated and had to change out their leader, was actually a wake-up moment for them, that they can't continue pursuing extremist policies that are supported by a fringe group of legislators like the NDP or the Bloc Québécois. And I would hope that near-death experience made them realize that what Canadians want and Albertans want is to be an economic superpower that includes energy, includes food, includes getting all of our resources to market. I mean, if anyone should look at the results of the last few months and say, gee, it's time to recalibrate, it should be the current Prime Minister. So that's why I'm very hopeful, having talked to him and said that now is the time for us to make good on the commitments that were made prior to the election, that were a joint communique released with all the premiers, and to make sure that we actually enact the things that were agreed to. I as I said in my speech yesterday, that Albertans expect action, not just words.
As a response to what's been happening in Alberta and Saskatchewan, Prime Minister Carney has announced that the next First Ministers meeting will be held in Saskatoon on June 2nd. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know, and this is News Radio.
Now You Know with Rob Snow continues on News Radio.
The stock market is in rally mode today because it likes what it's seeing on a possible breakthrough on trade between the United States and China, according to a joint statement issued out of Geneva, where trade talks were being held. Both countries have agreed to lower tariffs for the next 90 days. The United States will lower tariffs on Chinese-made goods from 145% down to 30%, and China agreed to lower its rate on U.S. goods by the same amount. Today, Scott Bessent, the United States Secretary of the Treasury, said both sides want more balanced trade.
We will continue moving toward U.S. independence or reliable supplies from allies on those, but the consensus from both delegations this weekend is neither side wants a decoupling. And what had occurred with these very high tariffs, as Ambassador Greer said, was the equivalent of an embargo, and neither side wants that. We do want trade. We want more balanced trade, and I think that both sides are committed to achieving that.
Bessent went on to say there are more negotiations to come between the two countries and that the United States wants more access for its products in the Chinese market.
We would like to see China open to more U.S. goods. We expect that as the negotiations proceed, that there will also be a possibility of purchase agreements to pull what is our largest bilateral trade deficit into balance. That has gotten out of balance, and much of this has happened through neglect over the past 4 years, as the previous administration did not engage on this issue. That was put forward to us by the Chinese, in fact, and we can see it in what happened to the Phase 1 agreement. We are only looking forward, and we look forward to very good discussions now that we have the mechanism created in Geneva this weekend for for talks.
This stand down on the trade battle between two of the world's largest economies comes after the United States and the United Kingdom announced a framework agreement on trade. That was the first such agreement since U.S. President Donald Trump announced his Liberation Day tariffs back in early April. Peter Mendelsohn is the UK's ambassador to the United States. He told Face the Nation on CBS this weekend that as far as the UK is concerned, the UK trade deal is a done deal.
Oh, yes, we regard it as finalized. A deal is a deal. And I have absolutely no doubt that the president and his colleagues, Secretary Lutnick and USTR Jameson Greer, having said they would do a deal, have been true to their word. They delivered this deal, and I have absolute confidence that they'll see it through. And it reflects the sort of amazing, confident relationship between our two countries and the cordial relationship personally between the president and the prime minister. Now we can build on it. I mean, we can look to other trade barriers that we can bring down so as to create more jobs in the United States. And also something very close to my heart, I want to see us build a close US-UK technology partnership.
There have been no developments on the tariff situation for Canada, even after Prime Minister Mark Carney's visit to the White House last week. There are still tariffs on Canadian-made steel and aluminum, autos and auto parts, potash and energy. And if there is any tariff relief coming for Canada, the U.S. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick told CNN State of the Union this weekend that a 10% baseline tariff will likely be the norm. And Lutnick also insisted higher prices from tariffs won't be passed along to the American consumer.
So we do expect a 10% baseline tariff to be in place for the foreseeable future. But don't buy the silly arguments that the U.S. consumer pays. Businesses, their job is to try to sell to the American consumer. And domestically produced products are not going to have that tariff. So the foreigners
who's going to eat the tariffs?
Finally have to compete. They're going to have to compete. What happens is the businesses and the countries primarily eat the tariff. Look, we have 25% tariffs that were set under President Trump's first term. I don't hear a single word, not a single word about those tariffs. No consumers in America, those were set in 2017 and 2018. No consumers in America sit here complaining about those tariffs.
Wall Street is certainly not complaining about any news about the easing of tariffs right now. Lots of green across the board on Wall Street and Bay Street. The Dow Jones Industrial Average up a little more than 2% on the day. It's up 900 points right now. The NASDAQ performing even better, up 3.5% so far today, up 630 points. The S&P 500 is up 145 points. That's a gain of 2.5% on the day. The gains a little more muted in Canada for the Toronto Stock Exchange main index, but still a gain of about 140 points or so, or 0.5%. Oil prices recently trading at 62.22 cents U.S. a barrel. That's up on the day about 2%. Gold, the loser today, it had been on a run, down about 3%, or more than $100, $32.40 U.S. an ounce. The last trade on gold, while the Canadian dollar is off slightly on the day, down 36 basis points at 71.39 cents U.S. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know on News Radio.
Now You Know with Rob Snow continues on News Radio.
Here with David Smith on a Monday. How was the fishing? You went fishing this weekend.
I did.
How was it?
It was a little slow.
A little slow.
Slow, but I think that has to do with the spring weather that we had in this part of the country. We had late snow, which kind of delays everything. But
I see.
Still caught a couple, brought one home. Gonna have some trout and risotto for dinner tonight.
How were the flies?
Not bad.
Flies are out in full force now.
Oddly enough, where I was, they weren't too bad. I was in the Bonnechere Valley region of Ontario, and it wasn't too bad yet. But I've heard reports from other areas around here that it's getting there.
They're out there hungry. I am here on a Monday with you, David, because I did not win the Lotto Max.
Again?
Yeah,
oh, my God.
Imagine that. Only 1 in 32 million chance. It wasn't me, but imagine this. There has been one winning ticket. That's it. One winning ticket. for the $80 million Lotto Max jackpot. So we don't know if it's one winner. Maybe it's like a workplace thing or whatever, right, Dave? You know, a bunch of employees go in on it together. But one ticket matched all the winning numbers in the Lotto Max draw. It was sold in Surrey, British Columbia, $80 million. $80 million is the largest lottery prize ever awarded in British Columbia. The previous record was a mere $70 million, which was claimed by a Burnaby woman back in October of 2001. So congratulations. And now we get to look forward to the news conference about the lottery win. And, you know, what are you going to do with your winnings? Are you going to give away money to charity, take care of your family? What's going to be your first extravagant thing? Are you going to quit your job? You know, all those questions.
I like the news conference. I do. I like it. Sometimes you get a character who's won. It's fun.
Maybe. The NHL playoffs, of course, continue. Round 2 of the NHL playoffs. Florida took game 4 last night against Toronto.
We love that.
So that series is all squared up at 2 with game 5 going Wednesday. So they'll, I guess they're giving an extra day off for travel because the series will switch back to Toronto now. Edmonton... Game 4 tonight against Vegas. The Oilers still lead that series 2-1. It's a heck of a game this weekend between the Oilers and the Vegas Golden Knights because Edmonton came back, squared it up, and it looked, as the clock was counting down, mere seconds left on the clock, it looked like it was going to go to overtime, and then Vegas scored this crazy goal with 0.4 seconds left to win in regulation time. And Dallas, game 4 Tuesday. Dallas and Winnipeg, with Dallas leading that series 2-1. Crazy one. We shouldn't forget the women are in the playoffs too. The Professional Women's Hockey League playoffs. A little bit of history this weekend. The Montreal Victoire. Catherine Dubois, the hero, scored the game-winning goal to lead the Victoire over the Ottawa Charge. 3-2 was the final score. 4 overtime periods, Dave.
Yeah.
4 overtime periods. What a crazy 6 hours of hockey. It was 6 hours. The longest professional women's hockey game in North American history. So that, with the women, that series, Montreal and Ottawa, classic matchup. That is all square, 1 game apiece. 6 hours, 4 overtimes.
The Newsday panel.
Well, here we go again. It is another all-island edition of the Newsday panel. Jordan Paquette is with us, Vice President, Blue Sky Strategy Group. How are you?
Great, Rob. How you doing?
Good. Say hello to Nick McRoberts, your fellow Islander. He's with Hill and Knowlton nowadays. How are you, Nick? Welcome back.
I'm good, guys. How we doing?
Good. So we have Charlottetown versus Summerside again. Okay. Here we go. The cabinet will be sworn in tomorrow. Mark Carney's cabinet. To me, I'd like to know if you agree with this. There are like 2 ultimate inside the bubble stories when it comes to what journalists and political people like yourselves, stories you care about, and then stories that the general public could care less about. One of them is this. The cabinet, who's going to be in the cabinet, who's going where, pieces on a chessboard. And the other is the budget. Like, we make such a big deal out of the budget, and it's always, kind of a one-day wonder, and I don't even know if it really registers with the public. Would you agree with that? I mean, the Ottawa bubble will be all over this, who's going where, but in the end, does anybody really care south of the Queensway in Ottawa who the new Minister of Fisheries and Oceans is, Jordan?
Yeah, very good points, Rob. I think you're ultimately right. I mean, everyone in Ottawa, journalists, people like Nick and I, are completely seized by this. You're right, trying to find out who's going where, who's going to hold the levers of power. But I think, at the end of the day, the average Canadian might be able to name a couple of cabinet ministers, perhaps.
Right. Maybe.
At the end of the day, it's still the guy at the top. And I think the way that Mark Carney is perhaps shaping up his government, he could be a lot more hands-on in terms of policies than Trudeau was. So I think that alone is perhaps telling.
What do you think, Nick? I mean, you'll be glued to it, but is someone from Malpec glued to this?
That's a good question. I don't know who the PEI rep is going to be. I mean, if you're looking at seniority, you've got Sean Casey in Charlottetown, but he's been unfortunately passed over a couple times. As you mentioned, Heath McDonald, the member for Malpec, has the experience at the provincial level as the finance minister and winning a successful campaign. I tend to agree to Jordan's point that maybe Canadians know a couple people from cabinet, and that'll be a big focus, right? Is figuring out those top people to pick. That will be beside Mark Carney, and I would imagine we're going to see those come from kind of that GTA Quebec City corridor that we talked about so often during the campaign.
All right, so I mean, much was made about the similarities between Justin Trudeau's cabinet and Mark Carney's first cabinet, which was 23, including Prime Minister Mark Carney. A lot of the same names, a lot of the same cast of characters. When you think about that, what I call the cast of characters, who makes the cut? Because this is a chance for a reset to me for Prime Minister Carney. He insisted during the election campaign, I'm different than Justin Trudeau. I'm going to have a different approach than Justin Trudeau. So this is a real opportunity for him to show Canadians, I'm not like the last Prime Minister. I have a different government, and here's my new government with a lot of new names and maybe some new names in high-profile positions. So who does he keep around, and who does he cut loose? What do you think, Jordan?
So very, very good points. It's it'll be interesting to see how he stick handles this and does try and make it new. On the one hand, you want to have some ministers if you're moving forward with a very aggressive agenda, build baby build, as the Prime Minister says. To have some experienced ministers around that can help deliver, that know the civil service, know how to push things through. On the other hand, you do have to show that you're a bit different, and he has committed to having a gender balanced cabinet again. So I would expect the number of ministers to go up to 30 range or something like that. I think it's going to be different than his pre-election cabinet. As far as who's in, who's out, obviously there's some people that Mark Carney convinced to run for him. People like Tim Hodgson in Markham. Former Goldman Sachs guy, and then you have Gregor Robinson in Vancouver. The Prime Minister flew him down during the election to have an announcement there on infrastructure. Carlos Liato in Quebec as a former finance minister. These are people that could make up a new sort of a Carney-type cabinet. Yeah. And as far as people who might be heading out, I think, look out west in Greater Vancouver area for someone like Jonathan Wilkinson. Was seen as perhaps a bit of an obstacle in some of the resource development things and environmental things from the Trudeau government. So that could be one to watch to head out as well. And then the question is, what happens with Chrystia Freeland?
Yeah, well, let's ask Nick. What do you think happens with Chrystia Freeland, Nick? What do you think happens? Right now, she's supposed to be on this file of interprovincial trade barriers.
Yeah.
What do you think happens to her?
Well, first off, Jordan picked all my cabinet draft picks, so I'm going to have to go back to the table here. But
right.
I think one of the things that's been reported, Rob, is this idea that Carney might go to a cabinet of a few very senior ministers as full cabinet ministers around him. Now we're getting really bubble conversation, and then a few ministers as ministers of state, more junior ministers. That'll be part of a wider cabinet that meets less frequently. That provides an opportunity for Prime Minister Carney to keep Chrystia Freeland, a very senior member of Parliament, in cabinet when she may expect a cabinet position, but kind of move her back in a role that isn't as public, isn't as driving home the government's messaging. And on Freeland specifically, I would imagine that calculus shifted the second the president brought her up in their pool spray the other day. I don't know, exactly what's in store for Chrystia Freeland tomorrow, but the word demotion or moving to the wings kind of, I think, is appropriate here.
Okay, we'll be right back. Talk a little bit more about this and a little bit more about the election results, with some suggesting Federal politics is morphing into a two-party political race, and I want to know what our panelists think of that. Are we headed toward a two-party system in federal politics? Talking a little bit about the cabinet swearing in, which will happen tomorrow. Mark Carney's new ministry will be sworn in at Rideau Hall tomorrow. Jordan Piquette is with us from Blue Sky Strategy Group, from Hill and Knowlton, Nick McRoberts. They've all been invited to Rideau Hall, 10:30 Eastern time tomorrow. They will all gather in the boardroom. So all of us are from Atlantic Canada. I'm from the number one island, Cape Breton. Nick, Nick and Jordan are both from PEI. I just wonder, I mean, you have to have what I would call political ministers in different parts of the country. And when it comes to Atlantic Canada, I don't think Dominic LeBlanc is going anywhere, but who do you see as sort of like the most powerful Atlantic Canada minister? Is it LeBlanc? Is it somebody new? I wonder what's going to happen to Sean Fraser. I mean, he quit and then he came back. I mean, do you see a cabinet spot for him? A rising star in Liberal circles seems to be this other guy, Cody Blois. Mark Carney already made him a cabinet minister of agriculture, which I thought was kind of an odd choice, but on the prairies, it's slim pickings for the Liberals. But who do you see as kind of like a rising star on the Liberal side, somebody who could be positioned to be in cabinet, Nick?
Yeah, I think you touched on it with Sean Fraser a little bit. I mean, his communication skills, both in question period and more generally, are very, very strong. So I'd have to think him. It's going to take a very strong person in Atlantic Canada to take that mantle away from Dom LeBlanc. I think, and to your point as well, Cody's been very strong on the agricultural file, both in committee and in the House, and now as minister. That was really a long time coming for him. Now, can you have two Nova Scotia MPs in a cabinet that's slimmed down to this size? I don't know. PEI doesn't have a seat. You kind of need to give them one at the cabinet table. There's a tricky balance to have here in Atlantic Canada. I'm also not so sure about Newfoundland and about what's at play there. They have some strong candidates. So, I think at some point there's a region here that's not going to get what they deem to be a fair shake, and that's just the product of a smaller cabinet.
What do you think, Jordan?
Yeah, I think Dominic LeBlanc stays. He's just too intertwined in the U.S. files. He's too big personality, steady hand. So I think he's around, which does bring back the question in Nova Scotia and what happens between Cody Blois and Sean Fraser. And now that Carney has also committed to the gender balance cabinet, you have to start looking outside of that too. So, I mean, you have a person named Jessica Fancy Landry. Don't know anything about her, but she beat Rick Perkins in South Shore St. Margaret. It's a conservative riding. Cumberland Colchester, there's Atlanta Hurdle, who always took over there. I don't know if either of them are cabinet material. But again, if you're looking at sort of shoring up political support in some of these areas, to take it away from the conservatives.
Maybe Jaime Batiste as well might be someone to watch.
Maybe Cape Breton gets somebody, Rob. You never know.
Maybe.
and we'll
hasn't been one in a while.
PEI. No, that's true. And on PEI,
what do you do, Jordan? Like you have, like the Liberals have 3 seats across Saskatchewan and Alberta. What do you do there?
So they're going to have to give some attention to it. I think in northern Saskatchewan there is an individual, Buckley Belanger, who's been in the Saskatchewan cabinet before. I'd see something like him going in. You have to address the Western alienation issue for sure. They have two MPs from Alberta elected, one Edmonton, one Calgary. That could just go back to a gender balance again. The person from Edmonton's female. But he does have to address it because there's a big issue there, and it's going to be a growing issue. And they're going to have somebody that gets along well with the Alberta government. Obviously, Mark Carney is going to make some of those overtures himself, but they're going to have some attention on the ground there for sure.
Sound like you were nodding your head in agreement there, Nick?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Buckley Belanger for sure, I think is almost a sure fit in cabinet.
Okay.
The name in Alberta that I've been hearing is Corey Hogan, who won in Calgary Confederation.
Okay.
But again, as Jordan says, that may come down to a gender balance thing and have to go with the candidate in Edmonton.
All right. Are we headed toward a 2-party system in Canada at the federal level? What do you think, Nick?
I don't think so. I think
No?
what happened here was a reflection of the times that we're in and a need to just go and get things done. But I don't think it's in Canadians' interest to, pick one side of the fence or the other. I think Canadians understand that there's a middle ground to play. This is going to sound like I'm advocating for a resurgence of the NDP, and I'm not. But I just think Canadians ultimately want more than two choices. They don't want to be, saddled with the status quo and saddled with, two choices that they may not always like. It's a benefit of our system. It's a defining characteristic of a parliamentary democracy, and it'll just continue to be so in the years ahead.
What do you think, Jordan?
Yeah, you'll always have some outlier parties. The NDP has a lot of work to do to get back to any point of them. Jagmeet Singh absolutely kind of killed the party, tied them to the Liberals, tied them to Justin Trudeau for the longest time. Had he called an election, or had he tried to force an election last fall, he'd probably be looking at 60, 70 seats and sitting as the official opposition leader, securing his job for a while. Obviously, I think in that particular situation, would be looking at a Pierre Poilievre as prime minister. But look, coming back to another point, Conservatives are going to have to learn how to win without the NDP. And I think they've started making a lot of those inroads in this last campaign as far as taking away some of these working class voters, younger voters, and having them into the Conservative column now. And that's where the party has to go in the future. To be competitive at future federal elections. We got to learn to fight without the NDP there to hope that they split the vote away.
Okay. When we come back, the way the calendar is set up now for the House of Commons, it's supposed to be a pretty short session because the House is supposed to rise on the 20th of June. So 3 weeks. 3 weeks. What can the Liberals get done in 3 weeks? I will just say this. One more thing about the cabinet. I mean, we're about 24 hours away from knowing where all the pieces fit. Incredibly tight. Not many leaks. I mean, the Trudeau PMO in the latter year, that place leaked like a sieve. We would already know by now most of the news about where people were going and whatnot. They're keeping a pretty tight lid on it, I must say. Nothing really yet. Other than Nick's point about, there might be a core group of ministers and then maybe mid-tier ministers like ministers of state. Other than that, that's about really the only news. But then they'll have to get down to work. And the House is supposed to break for the summer on June 20th right now. So, I mean, it goes like this. The 26th, they'll elect a speaker. The 27th of May, the king will read the speech from the throne. And then June 20th, it's the summer break. What are they going to try and do before the summer break? In those few weeks, what can they get done in that short amount of time, do you think, Nick McRoberts?
Well, an important procedural note is that 2 of those weeks are possible extensions. So you might see really late overnight votes, depending on what the government tries to push through. And to that point, I think the emphasis is going to be on interprovincial trade. The beginning of the Carney government is going to be on shoring up the Canadian economy and Canadian industry in defense of or in to counter the trade fight that we're getting from the United States. I think after the summer and into the fall, that's when you're going to see the expansion of trade, the expansion of Canadian projects. But this 4 weeks is on.
What about the tax cut, middle class tax cut he promised? Could they get that done, do you think?
That gets tight.
That's tight? Okay.
I think it depends on how I'll say this, I think it depends on how some of these recounts go and if they have a functional majority and how quickly they can move things through.
In a minute or less, Jordan, what do you think they can get done in 3 weeks and a bit?
Yeah, there'll be a lot of pomp and ceremony. I mean, with the king around, obviously people will be watching that. And then Carney's off to the G7 as well in Kananaskis. So there's going to be a lot of focus on that. I don't think the Conservatives are super interested in prolonging Parliament throughout the summer. They'll be facing a by-election to get Pierre back in the House for the fall. So I would watch for that. That doesn't mean they're just going to sit back and let the government do anything. I think if the Prime Minister puts forward some policies on trade, getting some relief from some of the tariffs, a tax cut, perhaps that's stuff that the Conservatives could help pass rather quickly, and then everyone heads off on their summer breaks. Otherwise, they may have to come back for a couple of weeks in July, which is always a potential if people agree to it.
Okay. All right. Great to hear from you to start the week on the Newsday panel. We'll speak soon. Bye-bye.
It's time to talk back.
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
Welcome to Talkback. It's 2 hours of debate and discussion on the big issues of the day. And today we're going to talk about public education and what's happening in our schools. Specifically, violence in the classroom. Violence in the hallways, violence in the schoolyard. According to a major study from a Canadian university, the University of Ottawa, this is an everyday occurrence. Students violently acting out against teachers and all the other staff in public schools. It happens every day. And this study says our schools are simply not the same places they used to be. They are different than they were even 10 years ago, it says. This report says violence in the school system is now so commonplace, it has become normalized. It has become normalized. It is a normal, everyday thing for a violent incident to take place in a Canadian school. This was an Ontario-focused report, but it probably applies nationwide. Rates of violence are described in this report as being outrageously high. And it's not just students. It would seem some parents are contributing to the problem as well. Of the more than 6,000 school workers questioned for this study, education workers from across the province of Ontario, nearly half said they have been harassed by parents, or what the study's authors call parent-initiated harassment. I read that and I think, well, it can't be my son's fault. My son's a little angel. It's not my daughter's fault. She's a little angel. It must be your fault. It must be the school's fault. It's the teacher's fault. The situation is so profound. It is compromising our students' abilities to learn. It is causing great distress in the workplace. Workers, as a result, are fleeing the education system. They are going to work elsewhere. Worker retention is a serious problem. Quite simply put, many schools have become, according to this report, toxic work environments. Toxic work environments. How toxic? Employees report a workplace so violent, they have taken to wearing padded clothing to work. They report going home after work bruised, sore, injured. They report being punched, bitten, having things thrown at them. Verbal abuse, also an everyday thing. Students in elementary school calling teachers the F word, the C word. A librarian told to go F herself. High school students repeatedly using the N word or uttering anti-Semitic slurs and homophobic slurs. Students telling teachers to F off, giving teachers the middle finger, acting out with a total disrespect for authority. Students openly defiant and refuse to do anything they are told. It is, according to this report, particularly bad for female workers in the school system who also endure sexual harassment. Teachers and EAs having to endure comments about their looks. Some reports say students slap them on the behind or try to grope them. Catcalls are commonplace. When parents are told about their children, some parents don't take it too well. They blame the teacher. They blame the educational assistant. They blame the principal. They blame the school. And then they make aggressive comments during phone calls. They send aggressive emails. They post abusive comments on social media. One school employee in this report describes a work environment filled with fear and hopelessness, where everyone walks on eggshells and where calls for help often go unanswered. 1-833-668-2577 is our call-in line. 1-833-668-2577. Do you have any experience with this? Sounds like a nightmare. A nightmare for students, a nightmare for staff. Who would want to work in an environment like this? I mean, no wonder there's a teacher shortage. No wonder people don't want to be educational assistants. You want to do this for that rate of pay? Who would put up with this? And yet, it is apparently everyday life. A worst-kept secret, it's called in this report. At least in Ontario's public school system. Is it really that different in other school systems across the country? To our listeners in Alberta or in Nova Scotia today? Here are some questions for you to get the conversation going for another week of Talkback. Why do you think it's like this? What happened? How did it get this bad? This lack of respect, this lack of discipline in the schools. How have our schools become so violent? What is it with students that they feel as though they can behave this way? And parents as bad as the students. And what do you think could be done about it? What could be done to restore order in public schools? What do you think about parents who blame their children's bad behavior on the school or on the teacher? Gosh, if you have any experience with this, we'd love to hear from you today. If you work or used to work in the public education system where you live, I mean, what has that been like for you? Is this something you can relate to? What do you think is causing it? What do you think can be done about it? Why are our schools so violent? What could some possible solutions be? What do you do about this? Detention, suspension, expulsion? What do you do? Bring back corporal punishment? We want to spend the next 2 hours learning more from you about the situation in our schools and the violence that is now said to be an everyday occurrence in Canadian classrooms. If you can help us understand this better, please join our conversation today. Our phone lines are open right now at 1-833-668-2577, 1-833-668-2577. And if you've never called before, just mention that, and we'll make your call a priority.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Violence in the classroom. According to a new study, violence in the schools, it's an everyday occurrence. Staff in public schools are saying it's become commonplace. They report physical violence against teachers and staff on a regular basis. It's happening all the time. Parents also more aggressive in their own behavior when they deal with school staff. Why do you think this is happening, and what do you think could be done about it? 1-833-668-2577 to have your say on Talkback today. Donna is up first in Calgary today. Hi, Donna.
Hi.
Hi, Donna. What do you think is going on here?
Well, let's see. I'm 68. I remember when I went to school, all through all the grades, you were respectful because they had this strap back at that same time.
Well, they
and
did,
I'm not
yes.
an advocate of that.
Right, okay.
But there was always consequences, not only at school, but when you got home. And you had respect. You never had any of this. And then, I had 4 children of my own, and that was about just before then they had taken God out of the school. We used to have to say the Lord's Prayer and sing the national anthem every morning.
Yes.
And then it was, there wasn't cell phones and everything until later when my kids got a bit older. And then my kids got older, and, there was consequences at home as well if they were suspended, because it affected the parents as well. Plus, you advocated for your children behaving. And then after my kids grew up, I fostered for 20 some years.
Wow. Okay.
And, social services, when the kids wanted a cell phone, they got a cell phone. And I remember so many times, they took away the power of the teachers. They said, you're not allowed to take their cell phone from them. In the beginning, they could take their phone, but now they have no say. Kids can be on their phone continually.
Okay. Well, some provinces and some school districts have imposed cell phone bans. Do you think that may be a step in the right direction?
Oh, definitely.
Definitely. Okay.
They're soaking up so much online. The majority of kids are online all the time. They're addicted, and it's like, help your kids, get them off there, because that's not healthy for their brains or anything. So I really believe that they've taken, and kids nowadays too, they've got this sense of entitlement.
Right.
Our parents can't touch them now. And I, like I said, I fostered. I know what it looks like when kids are abused. But I myself, I had 4 children, and I never beat them. The odd time, I'd smack them on the butt. And, that's just normal parenting.
Discipline. All right.
It's normal parenting. But, they just took parents' power even away, and they've taken the teacher's power away. So, of course, the child is going to think they can do whatever they want. Yeah.
Okay, Donna. Thank you, Donna. You've got us off to a good start, Donna. I'm going to have to wrap it up there. I could talk to you all afternoon. To Douglas in Kitchener up next. Hi, Douglas.
Hey, Rob. How you doing?
I'm good, Douglas. What do you think is going on here with this lack of discipline in the schools and the increase in violence in the school?
I agree with Donna. It has to start at home.
Okay.
I grew up in the same era where, unfortunately, I hate to admit I was a school bully. I've explained this to my children, my grandchildren, and it's something I deeply, deeply regret. But back then, if you got into a fight or something like that, you got the strap. And when you got home, you got it again. Back then, kids' sports games, baseball, hockey, whatever, the parents never yelled at the umpires or referees, but, that's commonplace now where they're yelling, screaming, and fighting. So they're not even setting the example for them. Now, with my generation, we grew up with the belt. If we got in trouble
Do you really think we need to bring that back? Corporal punishment?
I do to a certain extent.
You do? Well, okay.
Especially in the early ages.
Yeah.
Like with my daughters,
it
was just more of a, go get the spoon out of the cupboard. And they were bawling their eyes out on the way to and back. And a lot of times that was enough. But it has to start with the parents. They need to set the example. And, the kids have way, way too much freedom now.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Douglas. Good to hear from you, Douglas. Okay. Let's stop here, and we'll be right back. On the phone, Sarah's a couple of lines available. We're talking about violence in the classroom. It's It's a heck of a report that's been released by the University of Ottawa. It would shock you if you read it yourself, what is happening in our schools on an everyday basis. Maybe you have some experience with it. If you do, we'd love to know what's behind this rise in violence in the schools and what you think could be done about it. What do you think is going on? What could be done about it? To John in Calgary. Hello, John in Calgary.
Hello, how's it going?
I'm fine, John. What do you think is happening here? And what can we do about it?
It's crazy. Like, I have my daughter, she's in kindergarten.
Okay.
And sometimes 2-3 times a week, there is this one child in the class that erupts. She's hitting people, she's biting teachers, she's throwing chairs. Like, this is a weekly matter. And the teachers can't do anything. So whenever she erupts, they need to take everybody else out of the classroom. Yes. All the other students, they need to leave, and that one child stays in the class while they try to work it out. It's horrible because it shows to the other kids that if you make a fuss, if you scream, you get what you want.
Right.
And we try to explain that to our daughter, like, no, this is not what happened. They're trying to calm the situation. But kids see what they see, and that's how they perceive it.
Right.
And, like, the parents, a lot of it is basically the parents' fault because the teachers, their hands are tied. They can't literally pick the kid for the situation.
Right.
And the parents, all the emails they send, it's always, they're yelling, they're complaining. Everybody knows if you're sending something email, you can be as mean as you want because you're not face to face. Back in the days when we used to have parent-teacher conferences and go to the school and talk to the teachers, like, those parents won't be, well, some will, barking down the teacher's neck saying, what are you doing to my child? Why aren't you taking care of them?
Yes.
Like, the system needs to be overhauled and something has to be done soon because it's out of control. Like, right from kindergarten to grade 12, it is horrible out there.
Yeah, I was reading about that. There's a section about this in the report about evacuating the.
Yeah.
That's what they call it.
Does not like to use that term, evacuation.
Yeah,
but
I mean, they have one
exactly
quote from one teacher reported she was in class for 101 school days. 101 school days, the classroom had to be cleared 50 times. So every second day. The classroom had to be evacuated. Just that scenario that you were talking about. One child acts up, has a violent outburst. Everybody else is cleared out of the classroom. Incredibly disruptive to the learning environment. How are you supposed to learn in an environment like that? Right?
Like, how do you get back into a subject half an hour after said and have the kids try to...
Right. And then for the rest of the day, all anybody is talking about will be, we were evacuated in this, and little Susie lost her mind and everything else, right?
Exactly. And then
it's terrible. It's a terrible situation. Okay.
Stop sending out accident reports because there's just so many of them.
It's crazy. Okay, thank you. John, good to hear from you. Great point there on clearing the classroom and how common that was. Something I learned about today. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
We're talking about violence in the classroom today, violence in the school setting. There's a news report about a study that was done by researchers at the University of Ottawa. I read that report this morning in one of the papers, and then I actually went and read the report. If you want to do that yourself, it's out there on the internet, publicly available. Just Google "running on fumes" Ontario 2025 final report. It'll pop right up. It's a blood-curdling read. Let me tell you, I was shocked at some of the things that are in this report. I mean, I had heard that there was an increase of violent incidents in the classroom, but honestly, I had no idea how bad it was. Let me read for you, just to drive it home, some of the excerpts from this report. Quote, this is from a teacher of the 6th and 7th grades. The public has no idea what schools are really like. This isn't a board or area-specific problem. All schools are experiencing a rapid and unprecedented rise in violence in classrooms. Parents have no idea what their children are being subjected to every day because the media never talks about it, and teachers aren't permitted to talk about it to parents. Teachers with 20 years experience have never seen anything like this before. Among the findings, 70% of school staff have experienced at least one violent incident, 70%, and 30%, so almost 1 in 3 employees in the school system. Now, this is an Ontario-specific report. 1 in 3 have experienced at least 20 student-initiated acts of physical force. Imagine that, 20 times. 1 in 6 employees in the school system have experienced similar behavior from parents, with threats of physical force being the most common. And then there are various firsthand accounts all throughout this report. A youth worker, an employee described as a youth worker, says a parent threatened to run me over with their car because I asked them to move because they were blocking the school bus traffic. An educational assistant says this, quote, I'm treated as a punching bag, and they just want me to put on layers of personal protective equipment to lessen the blows. Another EA said this, it's getting harder and harder to do this job. We are not respected. Daily, we get sworn at, hit, bit, pinched, punched, have items thrown at us. We go home with injuries every single day. Another one. The disrespectful and abusive behaviors of students are getting progressively worse. Students seem to believe they can do and say whatever they want. I fear for the future of society. I fear for the future of society. What is going on? What can be done about it? How did it get to that? Mike in Halifax, thanks for waiting. Mike, you're on the air.
Oh, hi. How are you?
Hi, Mike. I'm good, Mike. Yeah, a little worried about reports like this, however. Doesn't sound very conducive to learning. What do you think?
Well, I think, sometimes what's good for the goose is good for the gander. Report cards on education, the kids at home, the parents at home, they're always waiting for the assessment. And when an assessment like this comes out, it's time for a pause, and it's time to take a close look at what's happening foundationally.
Okay. What do you think has happened foundationally that would lead to an outcome like this then?
Well, I think that what people have to realize is that education in Canada is a hierarchy of systems. And, the teacher in the classroom is just they're the one in the trenches.
Yes.
But a lot of the approaches, a lot of the philosophy of education comes from on high. Different boards, different organizations. I find it interesting that the role of, school boards, for example, like sort of a more synodal system of discussion in the local community it's now lacking here in this jurisdiction. There's a provincial board,
yes,
and they take all of their governance and direction from, an intellectual class who
from the ministry.
organize.
They would take it from the ministry, I guess, right, of education.
Yes. But even every province in Canada will defer to intellectuals at the university level who write the curriculum. And any provincial or regional curriculum is usually taken from the direction of these pan-Canadian organizations and educational think tanks. So, I think the thing is people have to take a look at where the decision-making is coming from and the core philosophy of education.
Okay.
I don't think it's enough to, have zero tolerance policies or, think about how you're going to punish misbehavior. Children at their very core are designed to learn developmentally. And if you have a philosophical education system that still insists on cookie cutter methods of designing curriculum and putting round pegs in square holes, you're going to have a system or systematic problems like we have now.
Okay.
I mean, boredom for a child. I mean, and everything's still built on a foundation of a Victorian educational model. You know, bums and chairs, 30 kids in a box with one adult, And of course, now they have EPAs, where the EPAs take on a lot of the disciplinary roles. But, in terms of, again, the hierarchy in schools themselves, the children know that the EPAs do not have the same status as a tenured teacher. So,
it just sounds to me like an environment where there's no fear of consequence whatsoever. And I'm wondering how you overcome something like that. If you don't, there's clearly a discipline problem here.
Yes, but at a fundamental level, right, when you're dealing with fear is often a reaction brought upon by anger. And, psychologically with adults as with children, if you're in an environment that you're uncomfortable in, or you feel somehow not recognized or excluded, you're going to react, in a way that's visceral. And that's what's happening. The kids aren't really part of the conversation. Parents aren't part of the conversation. Much of the policy and the core philosophy that our educational system is based on comes from on high, and it's
not working.
Really just not in touch with the times. I mean, look at all the technology we have in terms of facilitating communication. I mean, us right now on the phone. I'm in Halifax. You're probably in Ontario.
I'm in Quebec. David's in Ontario. We're broadcasting in Alberta. Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, okay. Look, I've got to run. Thank you. You've made some very interesting points. We'll chew on them for a while. 1-833-668-2577. Randy up next on the line. Hello, Randy. Hi, Randy.
Hi there. How are you?
I'm good, Randy. What's your opinion?
Well, I think we've gotten too soft on them, on the kids. Like, the parents work so much that they don't have time to look after their kids, right? So it comes down to the parents, I would believe, because the parents, in my opinion, should be setting the example. But so, like example, my kids, they go to a charter school.
Yes.
In Calgary here, and the charter school, if you don't do what you're supposed to do, they basically will tell you, okay, well, you're not welcome in our school, right?
Okay.
So then you have to go to a public school, and the public schools basically have no rules. My wife works at a public school, and she tells me all the horror stories that that happens, just like what you're saying. And they're not. There's a list of things that they're not allowed to do, whereas back in the day, like. I remember back in my day, I actually failed a grade. You can't fail kids anymore. Doesn't matter how poor they do. They get moved up to the next grade, right?
Okay. So I mean, so when you say too soft, what could be done to address that? What sort of measures would you be willing to tolerate? Okay.
Well, that's the thing is that should be an absolute no. Like putting your hands on a teacher, like that wasn't even a thought back in the day. Like when I was a kid, that was, you would get suspended, you would get expelled.
Oh, sure.
They would tell you you're not welcome.
And then, I think you and I were back in the same day, Randy, and then it was wait till you get home and you'll get a double dose of it, right?
Oh, absolutely. Right. Because now your parents have to stay home from work to watch you because you're at home, right? So I just think the parents, I've seen it like where the parents, like I have a friend who, his kids will do whatever they do at school, and he always takes their side of it. And he's walking into the school ready to lump the teacher because he's like, "What are you doing to my kid?" It's like, well, what is your kid doing to the teacher?
Right. Yeah.
The attitude is just, it's insane, right? Like parents have to understand that the teachers are there to teach, and if your kid's not learning, I honestly think they should be expelled if they're going to do that. Like you put your hands on a teacher, you're not welcome.
You shouldn't be in that school anymore. Okay. No. All right, Randy. Thank you.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. Okay.
Yes, you do.
Thank you.
Something's going to have to be done. Okay, Kat is up next. Thank you for waiting, Kat. I know the wait's been a bit long today. Thank you.
Hello.
Hi, Kat. You're on the air. What's your opinion, please?
My name's Pat, but anyway.
Pat. Sorry, Pat. That's my fault.
That's okay.
Yeah.
No worries. I have a niece who is a teacher here in Calgary, and I have volunteered in the classrooms a few times, and it is shocking what happened. And I'm kind of like, I don't understand why this child has so much power and the teachers are just absolutely hopeless. There's nothing they can do. And one of my thoughts, and I was kind of wondering if you know anything about it or if it's something that can be done to help these teachers, but there is a teachers union. Is there any way they can support the teachers more? Because in terms of the system, she's reached out to all the people, all the high levels in the school system, but her hands are tied. It's crazy.
Okay. What the authors of this report are saying about this is, first of all, they believe that the public school system is chronically underfunded, that the schools are too crowded and they're understaffed. They think children lost a lot of ground during the pandemic because of remote learning. And one of the big issues is now you have more students with special needs, and the staff who are trained to deal with students who have special needs, there's simply not enough of them. And
no question. And quite a few of them are on medications, and the medications, they're trying to regulate them while they're going to school. It just it's crazy. And I see so many of these good teachers leaving the profession because they just can't seem to get the support they need. Right. I don't know what the answers are, but somehow these teachers need help big time.
Okay. Thank you, Pat, for your call today. I'm glad we could get you on the air. We'll have to stop here. Rose is up next in Okotoks. Hello, Rose.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, Rose. Good to hear from you.
Good.
What do you think?
Yes. I have two daughters that are in the school system still, now in high school, but our first experience with this happened in grade 4 when my daughter was in a class with a child that had anger issues. And to some of your prior callers, there was conversations about having to evacuate or, clear out the room on a regular basis. My daughter actually came home with a black eye one day because this child was throwing things and a dislocated elbow on a different day.
Gosh.
As a result of it, and got to the point where my daughter was terrified to go to school. And as a parent, I cried regularly at the thought that I had to send my kid into a situation that was unsafe. And they did nothing for it because the focus is on inclusion. Okay. And ultimately, the next year, I moved my child to a different school because that was the only kind of control I had. During the school year, I couldn't find a school that had capacity. But my child went through psychological support for 3 years after just to get her feeling comfortable and safe being in the school. And the principals and the teachers were powerless to that point of, you have people making decisions at a higher level, and then the front line has to follow those rules, but they don't have the authority to actually effectively execute on what they're being responsible for. And that is, in my opinion, one of the problems. The other challenge, I think, is funding. Obviously, there's a challenge with making sure that we have the right resources in the right schools to support the children.
A big problem highlighted in this report seems to be there needs to be a lower ratio of EAs to children with special needs in particular.
Absolutely. Or maybe a higher ratio of EAs to children.
Higher ratio.
I'm not sure.
I guess. Yeah.
My
aunt
was an EA. And to that point of, you read in the report that they had to wear padded clothes or protective equipment.
Yes.
She was an EA to an autistic child and absolutely bit, kicked. He pulled her hair, got her to the ground. And she was a very tall, large woman, not easily. And this child, was in elementary. But when he went over the top, it was normal case. And the school system, again, could do nothing for her. That is what you accept for something that is almost barely above minimum wage.
Yeah.
Now, my children are in high school
that's
now.
the thing. And it seems because one of the frustrations that comes through in this report is that the employees go looking to their superiors. Hey, we need help. What are we going to do about this? Look what's going on in the schools. Violent incidents are happening every day. And the response from those in authority, the higher up, seems to be, it's part of the job. Like they just accept it as, well, get used to it. And we shouldn't get used to it, I don't think. That's why they talk about how it's become normalized, because they've normalized it.
Yes, and I would say to you this. If this happened in a for-profit workplace and there was some type of a special needs individual working, which absolutely there are in the workplace. I work with individuals who are autistic, who are high-functioning. If ever there was violence in that workplace towards employees, that company would be held accountable.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And I don't understand.
Good point.
Why not?
So why isn't the school system or the education system? Great point. A full hour of Talkback on this topic is still ahead after the latest breaking news.
It's time to talk back
on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now
and have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
Welcome to Talkback. We've been talking about a new study. It was done by researchers at the University of Ottawa. It's all about violence in the schools, which they say is now an everyday occurrence. This was a survey of more than 6,000 education workers. It was all across the province of Ontario, but the researchers say it's not a board issue. It's not an area-specific issue. It's an issue with public education. Sounds as though it's particularly terrible for women who work in the school system. Female teachers quoted in this report, I have male students who make lewd sexual gestures toward me. A black female teacher says, students are always using my race against me, calling me the N-word. Another female teacher says, I've heard students make comments about teachers' bra sizes. I've had students tell me I look good for my age. And the parents, I mean, that's a whole other issue. Parents who to the end of the earth will justify or make excuses for their children's bad behavior. Library worker, quote, a parent called, was incredibly rude and disrespectful. Told me to stop doing the bare minimum and get off my butt and go above and beyond for once. He wouldn't listen to anything I said, just continued to yell at me. A clerical worker in the school. We've all been yelled at on the phone by parents who are upset with the system, the administration. They take it out on us. While parents are berating me, I smile, nod, and try to apologize. Another clerical worker says this, there is major disrespect towards education workers from students every day. They're cursed at. And I've witnessed parents who are just as bad, screaming and cursing at staff. It affects the atmosphere of work. It makes me hate being in school. And the study says a recurrent theme among teachers was parents' perception of the educators' incompetence, playing out in aggressive emails, accusatory interactions, public chastisements, denigrating social media posts. Teachers spoke about parents yelling and threatening them over the phone and relentless communications through online platforms. I mean, what kind of work environment is this? What kind of learning environment is this? The level of opposition and disregard for a teacher's authority in the classroom is rising. It's like some students have forgot how to be part of a school community and how to respect others. It happens almost daily that a student simply refuses to listen to me. It's exhausting. Outright defiance. Outright defiance. But what do you do about it? What do you do about it? That's what we're trying to get at today. Who do we have up next here, David? I've lost track. Is it Dallas in Cambridge, I believe, is up
yes,
next?
It is. Yes.
Dallas, yeah. Dallas, you're up next in Cambridge, Ontario. Thanks for calling, Dallas. Go ahead.
How you doing today?
I'm good. Glad we could talk about this today.
I just really felt the need to weigh in on this one. I felt for a long, long time that Parents are not parents anymore.
Okay.
They just don't take control of their kids. Ultimately, it spills into the education system because the kid gets to go out until 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, wander the streets. Where's the parents? I don't know. You know, I raised 2 boys, one of which is laying on my couch at the moment. That's a bad thing.
Okay.
But I raised them to a level of respect, and I never laid a hand on them. I would manhandle them, yes, grab them by the shirt and, set them down.
Mm-hmm.
But it was always that level of respect.
Right.
And that's what got them through their school years. And clearly they never had any issues in the school. The schools have lost all control. Let's face it.
Now, what if Dallas, if I could just interrupt, what if there was an issue with one of your children at school that it got to the point where the parent or the principal called the home and said, your son is acting out in ways like this? What would you do about it that you think is not being done now?
I would go to school and bring the boy home and teach him a lesson.
Right.
Okay. Not in a brutal way, but I would teach him a lesson.
But that seems to be lacking in some cases here.
That's right. You're absolutely correct. And, I've heard a lot of your callers saying, that the parents lashing out at the teachers because the teacher's trying to discipline the child a little bit. If I got out of line when I was in class, I got stood out in the hallway for everybody to look at. But that you're not allowed to do that anymore because of all the do-gooders.
Now it seems everybody else is told to. Now it seems everybody else is told you go wait in the hallway while we sort out this one misbehaving child.
Well, right. You know what? We didn't evacuate a classroom because of one child. The child went out and stood in the hallway, and that was that.
Yeah, it's totally crazy. Yeah,
and
I understand what you're saying.
Just kept on learning, and that's, as far as I'm concerned, that's the way it should still be.
Yeah, good points all around.
Well, don't make everybody else suffer because of that one child that maybe the parents not doing a good job of. I don't know. But don't make everybody else suffer because of him or her. Remove the child, put them in a safe place, if you want to put it that way, and deal with the problem then.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Dallas.
That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, I think you're looking at it the way a lot of people would look at it, Dallas, with some common sense. Thank you so much. So just like that, we're off and running with hour number 2 of Talkback as we talk about what can be done to restore some civility in the classroom, restore some order in the classroom, and reduce these incidents of violence. 1-833-668-2577. Let's go to Waterloo, Ontario, Maryland, up next. Hello, Marilyn.
Hello.
Hi, Marilyn. You're on the air. What's your opinion?
Well, I tell you, I was driving home and was listening to your intro, and I could feel everything sort of well up inside of me. I'm a retired EA of 20 years, and it's all real and true, and it's a shame that it has been kept a secret for this long.
Okay. Why do you think it's not very well known about the situation in the classrooms? What's behind that, do you think?
Well, I don't know.
Okay.
I know that when violent incidents happened, we were to fill out violent incident reports and copy them to the union and the boards, and we're told, keep sending them in. Something's going to get done. And, for a while, I retired last year, and it was funny because the joke was, we're not EAs anymore. We're first responders. We wear walkie-talkies, and they put us where the behaviors are. And that's been going on probably for the last 10 years. And sometimes, you're hoping that the office responds quickly.
Right.
Most of them are emergencies. Or you go and you help your fellow EA, watching them get verbally abused or physically. And if a young girl would ask me, should I be an EA, I would say, don't do it. I'd say go for your ECE.
Okay.
Bottom line, EAs are at the bottom of the rung, and the respect issue is huge. And I think it was sometimes difficult because students would see how we were sort of treated from even administration. And we just...
Right, and if you weren't respected by the administration, why would they respect you, right? Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I mean, and I don't want to paint, all administration with the same brush, but
okay.
It was the most stressful job, and at one point I thought, I can't do this anymore. I've watched EAs have sitting in a hallway almost having a heart attack.
Wow. Oh my goodness gracious.
And I just don't know why we kept saying, who's going to bat for us? Like, who is it? Who's going to step up and go to bat for us? And yeah, you can fill out all the incident reports you want, but,
Right. But after the 200th incident report, what's the point of the 201st, I guess? That would be how you would feel. Right. I have to move along. Yeah. You've really brought it to life. But thank you, Marilyn. Let's go to Maureen is on the line. Maureen, you're up next. Hi, Maureen.
Hello.
Hi, Maureen.
Also worked as a TA here in Lethbridge, and the classrooms I worked in were usually kindergarten. But I think a lot of the problems come straight from whole society having a lack of respect for one another. Like, it's not just kids who don't have respect. Their parents don't show any respect for anyone else either, and they don't raise their children with respect. I had one little boy who was he was what we called a runner. If you didn't be close to him, he'd be gone. And so this one day he was acting up, and this was back in the day when you could still restrain children. And I had him in a restraint. Well, before I had him in the restraint, we were grappling on the hallway floor.
Oh, my gosh.
When I finally got him settled down, he turned to me and he said, I really like it when you're here because you never change what I'm supposed to do. Now, that's what children need, too, is a consistency of discipline.
Okay.
And that just about knocked me over when he said that. And I thought, well, I guess my mother raised me right, so.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But the last caller was correct. You sort of wonder where you belong, who's going to back you up, who's going to support you.
And you felt there was a lack of support, say from the hierarchy in the system, the higher ups. Yeah.
And it seemed it's reversed now, because it seems now that the parents have all the say. We were disciplining one child, and the mother it was grandmother. Mother sent the grandmother to say, don't treat my grandson this way. And we ended up going to the principal with her and explaining to the principal what was going on. But the parent should be involved in their children's schooling. Of course they should. But like you had said earlier, if you had done something wrong in school, boy, you were afraid to go home because you'd get it worse once you got home.
Wait till your father got home. I used to hate hearing that. Wait till your father got home. That I knew I was in for it then. Okay, Maureen, thank you for your call. Good points all around. We'll be right back.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
We have been talking about a new study by researchers at the University of Ottawa. This is violence in the schools is at alarming levels now. It's just commonplace. Reports of physical violence against teachers and staff at the hands of students. It's happening every day in classrooms across the country. 1-833-668-2577. Alex up next in Okotoks. Alex. Hi there, Alex.
Good morning, Rob.
Hi there.
Or good afternoon now, I guess. But I go back. Okay, so these people that you're talking about, they're essentially bullies that are doing this. And bullies all have their own issues. And quite often I find that the bullies are stressed themselves. I will never forget an incident in a class where I was watching a girl being bullied to the nth degree. And so I called out the bully on it. And the bully, I'm pretty much a tomboy. I've never been in, but I told the bully to meet me at the north doors of the school in Calgary after school, and the bully never showed up.
Right.
And so for 2 years, that same bully would slink down the hallway sideways and would never look at me and was scared because I said to the bully, "You're a B." And the B word, I called it out. Now I was 17 years of age. And so at the graduation dinner, the bully actually came up to me and said, "Remember what happened?" And I looked at her and I said, "What? I don't know what you're talking about." I knew what she was talking about, fine and well. And she said, "Well, I'm sorry." So wind that ahead 10 years later, and I come in to find the bully sitting at the dinner table at the 10th year reunion with the same girl that she was bullying. And that's because I called her out on it.
Okay.
And so bullies need a place to go,
right.
a safe place to go to vent their issues. This is what I'm thinking. Things have really not changed all that much. Technology has changed.
Yeah.
I know kids friends that their children and their nieces and nephews are all bullied by others because they haven't got the same technology.
But it's one thing to bully. It's one thing to bully a fellow student. I mean, that's a story as old as time. I mean, what we're talking about here are students. They're attacking teachers.
Bullies are bullies.
Like they're punching teachers. They're cursing at teachers.
They can. They will do what
I don't know. I never saw that in my day. in school. It was
I think a lot of because I know people with children who are teachers now who are on stress relief.
Oh yeah.
But bullies are bullies, and bullies will bully anyone that they know they can get away with it. That's the root.
Okay.
So there needs to be a handle on bullies. There needs to be, if so be it, a special committee inside each and every school. In Calgary, we had a police officer I don't know how much impact that was and how you would measure it, but bullies need to be called out immediately.
Okay.
Not afterwards. And they need to take action. Period.
All right, Alex. Good to hear from you today. Thank you for your perspective to Kitchener, Ontario. Ernie is up next. Hi, Ernie.
Hey, Rob. Couple comments on this. My oldest son, he's only in kindergarten now, but I've heard reports and stories about this already here, and I've made a couple of statements and comments on it. I got a call from the teacher. It was a while back. He got in a little skip with a kid and everything else like that, and I was asking her a bunch of questions about the incident, and I asked her some more details, and she's like, "Sorry, I can't give those details to you." And I said, "Please, just let me know. I want to be able to ask him about this when he gets home." And I go, "I firmly believe what you're saying. He's in kindergarten." And she goes, "You know how much that means to me that you said that?" And I said, "What do you mean? My kid's in kindergarten. Why would I believe him? He's like, I understand. For the most part, he's going to try to be honest, but he's in kindergarten. Why would I believe him over you?" And she goes, "You don't know how many parents, how I already feel that I can talk to you compared to different parents." And I was thinking, what in the heck kind of world are we living in, Rob? Like, this is like if mom and dad hear this from back in my day, again, like, and I'm only 40, like I would have got it more at home than I would have got it at the school, you know?
Well, yeah.
And so I feel the pressure of the teachers there. As far as like these incidents in class where the students got to leave the room, we got to put a stop to treating everybody fairly. I'm not just saying one incident, but I mean, if it's the common denominator, the same person that's disrupting everything for everyone else, these parents that are calling in and yelling at the teachers, kick them out of school. You know what? If your kid's not the problem and he's not the problem, then guess what? He can get kicked out, go sit at home with you. You have to stay home from your job or whatever. But that's the only way it's going to smarten some parents up, I think. And because I feel it's so unfair, and I feel the diversity stuff, the wokeism that's been pushed so hard about treating everyone so fairly. How do you treat somebody fairly if that's the same denominator that's happening all the time, Rob? And that's just my argument from what I'm hearing in this. I feel bad for teachers, but they can't even do anything about it. And I have a lot of teacher friends. Their ambitions to go above and beyond and to do anything, it's like, why bother? Like, we can't do it. Like, it's almost like they care less about it because they know it's just going to hurt them more in the long run if they fight against some of these issues.
This was kind of a new thing on me, Ernie. Thank you for your call. When I read this in this report, David, I don't know if this happened to you. Like, this never happened. The disruptive student was removed from the class. The school was not. The classroom was not evacuated of everybody except the problem child. How did it work when you were in school, Dave? I mean, this is one example from this report. One teacher says in 101 school days, the classroom had to be cleared 50 times. They evacuated the classroom 50 times, once every second school day, because a student was being violent.
I can never remember that having happened when I was in school in the late 2000s, early 2010s. I have vivid memories. One vivid memory of me being removed from the class because I was causing trouble, right? Stood out in the hall for like 75 minutes.
You were told to get out.
But evacuating
everybody else get out while we deal with David.
And in terms of violence against teachers, I remember there was one altercation between a teacher and a student. They got into a physical fight at my high school once in 4 years. And that was like the talk of the town. I bet. It wasn't normal.
No. And that's what they say is happening, that violence is so commonplace in the school setting now, it has become normalized. And when teachers and other staff complain, the administration, a common answer is it's part of the job, which just normalizes the behavior even more.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
What can be done about the rising prevalence of violence in the schools? What's behind that? What can be done about it? 1-833-668-2577 to have your say on Talkback. Keith in Alberta. Hello, Keith.
Yes, good afternoon, Rob.
Hi, Keith. Good to hear from you.
Thank you. As your listeners have commented, this is a multifaceted, major concern in our society. We're dealing with your topic, which is children in our schools. But I believe that in Canada, we have 54 penitentiaries and jails. And these young people that are acting out in our school system today, causing trouble for those that want to teach others, are going to be adults one day, and a certain percentage of those are going to end up in our provincial jails or our penitentiaries. This is so very, very unfortunate. And it's a growing concern because autism in children and hypoglycemia, which is a low blood sugar condition with about a page and a half of criteria directed to their disorder, which is hypoglycememia. It is a growing concern, and it's neurological and causes emotional outbursts. Basically, what we're dealing with here is chemical balance in the human body.
Okay.
We are a part of nature, the same as good black organic soil is a part of nature. And when you plant a seed in that black, good soil, it produces a wonderful plant, a healthy plant. In our particular case, because of chemical balance, the lifestyle of people today and the food that they have to feed their body is causing a chemical balance, an imbalance chemically.
Okay.
And that triggers various types of diseases, including neurological diseases. Autism is on the rise considerably. Hypoglycemia is almost never mentioned, and yet it is a disorder that will cause, I would venture to say that 90% of the people that are in our penitentiaries and our common...
Okay, I'm not sure about that. I don't really know too much about it. But you think a lot of this may be rooted in a lack of a healthy lifestyle, for example, proper food, exercise, sleep, maybe things like that?
More of a chemical balance. If our chemistry, the human chemistry, goes out of balance, and there are certain elements that are missing in that chemical balance, it will cause major upsets. And of course, in this particular case, it's the school and the teachers, and it's probably just a few students that are causing the majority of...
Maybe. I mean, that's what it's like in the criminal justice system, for sure. Okay, I've got to run, Keith. Thank you for your call. We'll take another call here. Terry up next. Hi, Terry. You're on the air, Terry. Go ahead.
I figure it's called consequences for actions.
Okay. Or maybe lack of consequences in this case.
That's exactly what's going on.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people will disagree with me on this, but I can almost say it was a life-altering moment in grade 7, which is when I think the strap was taken out of schools. And I can remember my teacher talking to the guy sitting beside me, getting him to do something. And he just leaned back in his desk, folded his arms, looked up at her and said, "Bleep you." And I thought, oh man, like what went through my head at that time, if I ever did that, I would have reaped the wrath of Khan at home.
Right. Yeah.
And so people, I think, misconstrue discipline with beating. You're beating your kids. No, I'm disciplining them. You don't have to beat a kid to discipline him.
Okay.
There's a difference there.
Okay. Well, I mean, there's been quite a push on because we do still have the spanking law in Canada. It makes Canada kind of an outlier among first world countries that we still have a law in this book, Section 43 of the Criminal Code, which is known as the spanking law. It is still part of the criminal code. There have been legislative moves to get rid of it, but it's still there, and it protects teachers, parents, guardians from criminal charges if they use corporal punishment to correct a child's behavior. They're trying to get rid of it. They haven't managed to do it just yet. I don't know. A lot of people would. I don't know. A lot of people would say corporal punishment is archaic, and there's no evidence that it works, and it could cause lasting harm to the child, sir.
Yeah.
So.
And that's why we reap what they have today, because that's
okay. You think that could be the root of some of the problems? Thank you for your call, Terry. It was inevitable. I think that would come up. We'll be right back. News is coming up next. This is News Radio.